Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Ripple Effect podcast, the RE podcast. First thing I want to talk about is I want to talk about that intro that everybody just heard.
That intro was dope.
That intro, I feel like needs to be in the 1970s.
Sean made the intro, and I'm super. I like it. I personally think it's cool. I think we should listen to it every time before we do a podcast, just because it gets me in the zone. I think it gets me in the zone.
The zone for what exactly is the question?
The zone for podcastness.
Multiplication
of churches.
Of churches and ministry.
Which brings us to what exactly you are here for. Ripple Effect, or the RE podcast, is about equipping people to do ministry, to multiply ministry. So we are setting out to create an online resource for multiplying church. So I kind of want to start with that. Like, what does that mean to multiply church? Just throw that out there to you guys.
What?
To
multiply church.
To grow the church.
Yes, but
so that people get saved with the love of Jesus every day.
Yes, amen,
She's
hallelujah.
preaching,
If I had a hanky right now, I have a napkin. But what I'm thinking is we have to kind of set up church and define church, because we got people that are going to listen to this and they're going to say, okay, well, so you want to be an online resource for multiplying church. Well, that's great. I'm in a house church. Is this for me? I'm in a mega church. Is this for me? I'm in a small group. Is this for me? And I think the answer is yes, yes, and yes. It's for everybody. It really depends on what your definition of church is. So I kind of wanted to throw that out there and talk a little bit about just about church and what do we think, what do we feel like church is? What exactly are we multiplying?
But don't you feel like that church? You just answer your own question, because
I answered my question with my opinion. Now I'm looking for.
No, you answer your own question, because you said it's for everybody, and church for everybody looks completely different. So.
Yeah, I mean, I really think church, comes down to the biblical fundamentalist part, I guess you could say, of like, what is the body? Mm-hmm. Like, is it a building? Is it a group of people? And then knowing the culture where you're having church is going to be probably a little different, and that's honestly something I think personally that the church in general is kind of lacking in at the moment. But as far as what is the church, I mean, it's literally the people that make up.
So if we're an online resource for multiplying church, and saying that the church is the people, so we're really a hub for discipleship and disciple making, and really trying to take and resource people to make disciples within their context, whether that be the local church, like a church building, whether that be a small group, whether that be their workplace, in the marketplace, like whatever context that is. The idea that we want to be an online resource that equips people to multiply church or to make disciples in the way that Jesus commanded us to be. And I think that really hits home with what RE, the baseline vision for RE is. We're going to talk about a lot of stuff. We're going to ask a lot of questions. We're going to try to answer a lot of questions. There's going to be a lot of things that we're going to do over the course of this podcast and through the episodes. One of the things that we want to, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, we want you guys to get involved. We want you guys to be able to ask questions. And we'll talk to you guys at the end of the podcast about how you can do that. But I think that, basically being a place and for equipping and for really being able to like a hub or a resource for people to be able to go out and make disciples within their context, whether that be multiplying a large church into other churches in their neighborhood or businesses or whatever that looks like. To be able to go out and make disciples, as I think the purpose and the focus.
Which, if you're planning a church, that's your goal already.
Yes, but I think so many people are caught by this barrier of like what is church? Because we struggled with it, and so all right. Well, let's talk for a minute about where we came from, and why we're here. So we're in Detroit, Michigan. So we're part of Detroit Market Church, which is a church plant here in Detroit, Michigan. And me and my wife Crystal.
Hey.
we moved here 4.5, almost 5 years ago from San Francisco to plant a church in Detroit. And when we moved here, we had this like, I don't want to say completely box church mentality, but we wanted a building and a service and Sunday mornings, and like that was our
typical
vision.
Gathering.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was our vision. That was our focus. And I think like, and that changed. And what changed it was our neighborhood, was the people, was learning the city and the culture and where we're at. That changed the vision that we had for how we were going to make disciples here in Detroit. And it became something, and it is becoming something completely different. And so I want to first like you start by just like throwing out the idea that church is this boxed. Like when we talk about multiplying church, we're not talking about like your building and now you have another building, 6 blocks down, and then you have another building 2 miles away. Like we're not talking about multiplying a building. We're talking about making disciples, and that can happen in so many different ways, in so many different contexts.
Well, I think what's interesting too is when you both came here to start a church, you had here's what church looks like. It's very structured. Like we've done it for most of our lives. We know how to do church. We know how to do church really well. Let's go do it over in this, in this case, Detroit, but in, a certain area. And it sounds like you found out that you couldn't do that. So you had to actually tailor your ministry and church to actually minister to that group of people, right?
Yeah. Well,
I think so often, like we as the church, we come in and we say, oh, we have so much to offer. We can fix this, or we can, Detroit is a great opportunity for people that, want to feel good about themselves or see a project and they want to fix it. And so it's a great opportunity to come and do that. They see it like that. But the fact of the matter is that it's a city and that it's been here forever, and there are people here that have been here forever that legitimately are doing church outside of box church mentality, and they're discipling and they're loving on people, and it's because they've known the culture forever, and they didn't need Sal and I to move here like to continue to do what they're doing because they're doing it well. And there are certain box churches in the city that don't need Sal and I to come and help them to do what they're doing. But like God had called us specifically to come to Detroit, and no matter like what we thought, we learned when we moved here that it was very different.
And I think like, you guys who are listening are, 6-7 minutes into the podcast really thinking like, okay, is this for me? Like, is this going to be for me? And I think the answer to that question is like, are you a follower of Jesus who believes that he's called you to make disciples? I mean, if the answer to that question is yes, it doesn't matter if you are a pastor, if you're not a pastor. It doesn't matter if you lead a ministry or don't lead a ministry, or go to a church or don't go to church. If you're a believer, if you're a follower in Jesus, and you believe that the Great Commission is true, and God is calling you to make disciples, then the answer is a resounding yes. This podcast is absolutely for you. It's for the pastor, it's for the church leader, but it's for the believer that believes in this idea of multiplying church is making disciples, and really and this becoming a resource for you to be able to use in your life and in your ministry, in your church, whatever it may be, to go out and do that, to make disciples. I think that's a big part. So you guys heard, Crystal and I, we moved here almost 5 years ago to Detroit from San Francisco, two totally different worlds. I mean, like they almost couldn't be more different. But we knew that it was God. We knew that God was calling us here. And there are those days where you wake up crying, like, "Oh my God, I'm still in Detroit." I wish it was warm and nice, and I was back on the West Coast. But we still know that this is where God's called us to. But then we have Sean over here, who moved here almost a year ago.
Yeah, man, it's crazy. Feels like forever and not at the same time.
I don't know how I should take that. Like, that's a
I don't know how I mean it. Yeah, man, I met you crazy fools 10 years ago about. And,
at least.
It was different. I came to the D from Massachusetts, around the Boston area. And personally, born and raised in the South. living in Massachusetts was a culture shock. And it was, I don't know, just so completely different. I mean, the people there are completely different. Everything about culture is different, you know. So coming to Detroit,
do they have Chick-fil-A?
They do not have Chick-fil-A, man.
That would be way different.
It was a rough 5 years with no Chick-fil-A. There is no Jesus.
And then you moved to Detroit.
Without Chick-fil-A.
And then you moved to Detroit. We don't have Chick-fil-A, so
it's like, you know,
one barren wasteland to another.
It's the suffering that I've been called to for the Lord.
But how do you like it here, man? Since moving here almost a year ago, you've been in Detroit for a year. Like,
I mean, aside from the Chick-fil-A thing, I really like Detroit. It's obviously super urban and very eclectic. A lot of diversity. And, man, it's nothing like, you know, the media portrays it. I mean, there are certain things in certain places, but in what city do you not have that? And Detroit just so happens to be so freaking huge that you have a little bit more of it. But I love the city, man. The people here are mostly pretty awesome, except when they're driving.
Oh, my gosh.
But we're not going to go there.
Oh.
But, yeah, anyway, moving here to kind of join you guys to plant this church and be a part of that whole thing and honestly re-examine what it means to do church in a completely different way and kind of challenge what I grew up in and the stuff that I was taught. So yeah, it's a really cool place for me in a lot of ways. And
so let's talk. I mean, let's talk about let's talk about church planting and stuff. I mean, we've started and stopped a lot of stuff, and I feel like part of what church planting is, like when you go, especially so when we moved here 5 years ago from San Francisco, like we were going to plant like a normal church, like that was going to be our thing. Sunday mornings, 10 a.m. Bible studies, children's church, youth group. Like this is what we knew of church, and so this is what we were gonna have, what we were gonna build. And then in learning the neighborhood, learning the people, learning the culture, there are 3 churches that I can literally walk to from my house, and they are like virtually empty on Sunday mornings. Like just having another building where we had church wasn't going to do anything here. Not that that's not a thing that should happen. I mean, we're not in any way, shape, or form saying like, oh, you shouldn't have a church building. I'm just saying like in our context, in our neighborhood, we looked at the people and we said, okay, you need something different. And so it's been a lot of like throwing spaghetti up against the wall and just seeing what sticks. Like we just try a bunch of stuff, and then like some stuff works, some stuff doesn't. And I think that's like the nature of church planting in and of itself. Like you're going to go and you're going to do stuff, whether it be like you're starting Sunday morning service, or if you're starting a business that reaches people in your neighborhood, or if you're starting house churches or small groups, or like you're going to start stuff. Like you're going to do stuff, and some stuff just is not going to work.
Sure.
Like I know for me, like I beat myself up like a lot over the stuff that didn't work. I felt like I should have had it all together. Like, God, you called me to be the quote unquote pastor of this church in this city. And here I am like trying this group, and then this doesn't work. Or I tried this thing and it didn't work. Or I tried this thing and spent a bunch of money and then it didn't work. It was these failures and everything that like really like, they really kind of start to break you down after a little while. And I think one of the things that we need as church planners is like a community of people that are like for us, that are praying for us, that are in it with us, other church planners, like people so we can encourage one another. I think that's huge, because it's not an easy thing, Well,
and to that point, even since I've been here in 11 and a half months, it's been interesting and honestly really cool, and I guess encouraging to meet other church planners who came here and have a super similar story to you and Crystal, where they were met with adversity and they really were challenged in what they were planning, how they were planting. Okay, you have the calling, that's great and awesome, but it doesn't mean like because you're a Christian and you're called to be a pastor that everything's just laid out and super simple and I'm going to move there and it'll be this fairy tale adventure that God will just open like this
unicorns
and this
and pooping rainbows.
But He doesn't always just do that. Yeah. And, that's a struggle and that's hard, and you can really question why you're here, and especially in this city where, Detroit and its history and the things that are going on even just in this specific city. So that's definitely been interesting.
And we're doing things differently. We don't have the Sunday morning service. We have small groups. We have small groups that meet around the city. We have businesses that we've started to try to interact with and engage culture.
Which is interesting because, can we talk about businesses missions for a second?
Yeah.
What is that whole thing? And
so, one of the things that we decided when we moved to Detroit, we knew nothing. I grew up here. I moved away when I was 18, and then I came back 15 years later, and it was a totally different city.
Sure.
And so I decided, right off the bat, I knew nothing. I didn't know the people. I didn't know the new culture. I didn't know what was happening in Detroit. And so the first thing I had to do was try to engage people. We had to try to engage people. And so the way that we decided to do that was to start businesses. We were all right, let's start a business. And we started businesses that have been successful on some level, and we've started businesses that have been utter failures and cost us a bunch of money, and we started businesses that continue to cost us money, but we keep doing them anyway because I don't know why. But we have this but it's about engaging people and engaging culture. So when this idea of business as mission is starting a business, but then going out and helping in that business actually feeds the mission. Helps you connect with people, helps you do, or in some cases funds your outreaches and some of the different things that you do. And that's just another way of doing church. It's another way of outside of the box way of doing church. And talking to people who have the Sunday morning gatherings and things like that. I think as a church planner, it doesn't matter what type of church that you're planning, what type of ministry that you're going after, but when you're starting something like this new from the ground up, whether it be a Sunday church or a business as mission or small groups or house church or whatever, we all experience that same inadequacy. I feel when things don't go right or when things are are hard or that, you come against that point where you're just I can't do this. God, there's 5 people coming to church right now, and it's literally my family. What is going on? What is this thing?
Well, I feel that is a great point to bring up too, because so many times we measure our success by how many people come through our doors, whether it be a box church or a small group. And for us, if you wanted to measure our success by that, then we're failing. But I feel that ultimately, if we look at the model that Jesus did, he had 12 disciples and he poured into their lives, and then he had 3 that he was very, very close with, and he kind of mentored them. And, I just feel that if we model our lives after him, then it's more about quality than it is quantity. But it's hard for us when it is just, listen, it's hard, to just have your family walk through, or your family in one person. You're man, we suck at life because this is horrible, so... But ultimately, it's not that. You have to look at the fruit of what you're doing, and if you have people that are bearing fruit, then even if it's one person, it's worth it.
Well, I measure my success in the number of cups of coffee that I drink in a day to keep me awake, because that means I'm doing something. I'm constantly moving, constantly have stuff going on. I need caffeine influx, so I'm super successful. It's my 5th cup of coffee today, and it's noon. Not even, it's 1:30.
I think it's interesting that we're starting a podcast and conversations around multiplying church. Whether that's traditional church or an urban church or something overseas or whatever that is. We're saying, okay, we want to grow this group of people and we want that to multiply. And then we have the conversation we just had about man, it really sucks when it's just 4 people and you feel inadequate, and it's so how do you get out of that? Someone comes somewhere to start a church. They're doing it with their family. Maybe they meet a couple of people. They're starting this house group thing. How does multiplication happen?
Yeah, I think I don't have a direct answer for that.
And that's why you suck.
That is...
I have no idea, really, because...
Many reasons why I suck. It's just one of them. I don't have a direct answer for that. And I think that's why...
I think that's okay.
Yeah, it has to be.
Nice.
It has to be okay. It has to be okay.
Because I think that if you're willing to walk the journey, of church planting, whether you're starting from the ground up or you're starting with a building or you're starting with 8 people or you're starting with 300, I think if you're willing to walk that journey, you're going to have, you're going to be constantly in that season of, reevaluation. You're constantly going to be saying, okay, this works. Okay, this doesn't work. Okay, we're going to try this for 3 weeks or 3 months. And if it doesn't work, then we're going to try something else. And I think that, honestly, we've learned more than anything that you really can't judge success by how many people come through the door, even though that's what we've been taught a lot of times, like to measure success as pastors, as lay people, as, whatever title that we all may have, as just a person coming in the door as a, just a congregant of a church. We are taught, if you've grown up in the church for any amount of time, that you have to measure success by how many people are attending or how big the crowd was, or, and so I think that.
Well, and even deeper than that, because that's how the people who are quote unquote running the church, the pastors, honestly get their paycheck.
Well, it's not just about getting your paycheck. Like, it's how you're judged. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know, and I'm sure it's not the same for all denominations, but like you fill out paperwork, sometimes monthly paperwork that says how many people attended your gathering, how many gatherings did you have, how many people got saved, how many baptisms have you done? Like literally, like you are judged by the numbers. Like what does that? It is definitely the game of church, regardless of the type of church, the game of church, the business of church is definitely a quantity game. And it causes us to feel like we may have the most amazing worship service ever with like me and my family and Sean and a couple of people from down the street. Like we may have the most amazing worship service ever, but we could still look at that and say, man, there was only like 7 people here, 8 people here, or whatever the case might be, and still feel like internally like we're failing because I got to fill out that report every week.
Yeah, because 6 of those people are our family.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. It was just like, I fill out my paperwork, and my 2-year-old, like, she gets saved every single month because I got to put something in the box. You're like, oh yeah, we had one. It happened again.
By the way, you don't fill out the report, I do. So really, that's not true.
Rededicated her life again
anyone that's
month.
Listening, that's not true.
So exciting.
But anyway, it's definitely, you have to be willing to walk the journey of being willing to reevaluate, to being authentic to what it is that you're doing, to being the heart of the matter, knowing, okay, this may not succeed right now. This may not, to the masses, it may not seem as if we are being a success, but, it's learning to model our lives after Christ and how He wants, and each of us do not have the same journey. Like, each of us do not have the same destiny, and our church isn't supposed to look like the Baptist church down the street or any denomination church down the street. Like, it doesn't really matter what denomination. I mean, it just, as long as you're being obedient to what it is that God's asking you to partner with Him with, then I think that should be our focus and not performing for God. And that's definitely something where I've been this year specifically.
But in reality, if you are making disciples, if you are doing discipleship on any level, mm-hmm. whatever that looks like, then you are
multiplying the
church. Is that safe to say? Is that a safe assumption in this group, in this room?
It's pretty safe.
Okay. So, with that said, I think we want to create a community. We want this to be a community. RE is we're going to have
It's our favorite word. Everything's
community.
A community.
I know, yes.
Let's create a community.
This is going to be a community inside of a community.
And community. That's
developed under the umbrella of another community. It's so exciting. But I think RE, I don't know how else to describe it. When you think about, what we, this, this resource, this podcast, this, what we're doing, it's really about equipping people, but it's about helping other people equip other people at the same time. That's why we want listeners, we want people to get involved in the conversation. We're going to bring on guest speakers. We're going to answer questions, that people have about certain topics that relate to church planning. So it may be a big church oh my gosh, my finances are out of whack. How can I fix this, change that, or the other so that I can multiply? Okay, cool. We'll go try to bring on somebody who has an idea of how to do that. Or maybe like, I have a small group in my living room. Like, what does that look like to multiply out? Or maybe like we have a business that's missionally focused. What does it look like, down the road? How do we multiply that? There may be a ton of questions that people have about all kinds of different ways that they're building church or making disciples. And this is a place to be able to ask those questions. And so how is it that somebody would ask a question or engage with us in some way? I'm not looking to answer my own question, guys. I'm asking that question so somebody else would answer it.
If you want to get involved in the conversations that we are having,
you need to check us out on all of our social media.
For sure. Every single one of them. We got Facebook. What's our Facebook page, Sal?
Facebook is facebook.com//RE Church Mag.
It's just slash. Or is it / Because you said both, so I don't want to.
It is just one slash. If you do two, you're going to get pages
that'll be weird.
So
Twitter.
Facebook.com/RE Church Mag, Twitter.com/RE Church Mag, and REChurchMag.com. So you can hit us up on any one of those locations.
Which is probably maybe not the coolest one, but we'll have a ton of articles on it, resources that we already know, resources that we'll find, and honestly, like. A big part of the whole point of, networking and creating a podcast and cultivating conversations of community within church,
within other
communities and other cultures, and
is honestly to learn. We're in this doing it, and we want to connect with other people that are in this doing it, and we want to hear your successes. We also want to hear your failures because.
Your failures.
Because, we want to grow together.
Is that coffee?
I have not had my 7 cups of coffee yet, so.
But we do, and we want to learn from each other. We're not sitting up here on this podcast saying, we have all of the answers, come hither and listen to what we have to say. That's
with the
not,
these and the thous and the thuses.
That's not where we're at. We're actually in this same boat as everybody else, where we're looking at ourselves constantly going man, I am a horrible church planner, and questioning my own salvation at points. Am I even doing anything right? And I think we want to have, in creating this, I think we want to be able to have that place where people can dialogue with each other and learn from each other. So Facebook.com/RE Church Mag. Like us on Facebook and join that conversation. Join the conversation on Twitter. Twitter.com/RE Church Mag. And
hashtag it.
Yeah. Hashtag RE Church Mag. And then
RE Church Mag. There is no space. Honestly, I should be saying all this. I don't know why we flopped that. But.
I don't know, but we're still going.
And we're just gonna keep talking about all of our social media because
this is the most important. I feel like this is the most important part of this.
The social media.
Yeah, because this is where if you have a question and you want to know about hey man, I'm really struggling with this in my church plan. Twitter, Facebook, those are the place to ask that question so that we can maybe there's somebody that's already part of that Facebook group or already connected with us on Twitter that has an answer for you. That would be awesome. And if not, we're going to be going through all of these questions and things like that, and we're going to be trying to find people who can speak to that and bring them on as guests in the podcast. So if you got a question about what to do about this situation in kids church, we go try to find a kids church expert and bring them on so they can talk about whatever that issue was. But really, this is about helping each other to multiply the church in all of our cities, in all of our neighborhoods.
Awesome. Is that so hard to understand?
It's so hard. It's so hard.
Jeez.
I mean, I do want to say we have a dear friend coming in actually tomorrow night / Thursday morning in the wee hours. Mm. His name is Nolan.
Yes.
He's coming from Florida. And definitely going to be snagging him for some interviews and some condos, keeping it real.
Yeah. Nolan was a youth pastor for a really long time. I've known Nolan for a while, and he's actually stepping out to some other avenues of ministry now, and so I think it's going to be cool to get him on to talk a little bit about some of the things he's experienced. And
we're just going to have really sick fellowship with him.
Sick fellowship. It's going to be It's going to be I echo that, Sean. I echo your echo.
Okay, we're done.
Okay. Crystal is obviously signing off, so that means that this is the end of the first podcast episode. So I hope that you guys got most of your questions answered and or have a lot more questions to ask about what the heck this thing really, really is. And that would entice you guys to stay tuned and be a part of this community that Crystal loves to talk so much about.
Not me, brother.
Facebook.com/REChurchMag, Twitter.com/REChurchMag.
Bye. See ya.